Have you ever left a room feeling smaller than when you entered, haunted by a glance, a tone, a silence you couldn't name but felt deeply? Sometimes it's not words that wound us, but what we fail to understand beneath them, our own emotions, reflected back by others. This is where the real training begins. Stay with me. Let's uncover what strength truly sounds like in silence. As we begin this first chapter, imagine this. You walk into a room filled with people you respect. Conversations flow easily, yet one glance, one careless word pierces deeper than it should. You smile, but something inside you twists. Hours later, that moment still lingers, not because of what was said, but because of what it stirred in you. This is where most people misunderstand strength. They think it's about knowledge, achievement, or control over others. But the truth? If you cannot master yourself, you master nothing. You can be brilliant, educated, accomplished, respected. Yet if your temper owns you when someone disrespects you, if you cannot listen when another soul needs to be heard, if you speak only to defend rather than to understand, then your power is fragile. Not because you lack intelligence, but because you've surrendered command of the only battlefield that truly matters, your own mind. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. But most never do. They mistake reaction for action. They confuse motion for mastery. They let emotion lead them like a horse dragging a rider through chaos. In truth, emotional intelligence is not a modern invention. It's an ancient discipline, a Stoic art. The quiet craft of understanding what moves within you before it moves your life off course. It's not about feeling less, but about seeing clearly. Emotions are not enemies, they are signals, ancient messengers wired into your very blood. They were once your ancestors' alarm bells, the fear that kept them alive, the anger that defended their tribe, the joy that bound them together. But the world changed, and the signals stayed the same. You no longer face wolves in the forest, yet an ignored message, a cold glance, or a missed invitation can trigger storms just as fierce. We've evolved in body, but not in perception. Our instincts still treat every discomfort as danger. The difference is, now the jungle is internal. The lions are your insecurities, the arrows are your thoughts. That is why, as Seneca warned, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Today, we live surrounded by noise, emails unanswered, relationships strained, expectations colliding, and we crumble not because we are weak, but because we never learned how to face what we feel. To live without emotional awareness is to wander blindfolded through a psychological desert. You keep moving, but every step deepens your thirst. You reach for achievements, yet remain parched. Why? Because success without self-understanding is emptiness wearing a crown. I have met people who seem unshakable on the surface, the executive, the artist, the scholar, yet behind their confidence lies exhaustion. Their achievements have become cages. They no longer work for meaning, they work to outrun their emotions. And still, when night falls, they ask the same quiet question. Why do I feel hollow when I have everything? Without mastery of emotion, life becomes a repetition of small self-betrayals. You let anger speak for you. You let fear decide for you. You let pride end relationships that only needed understanding. You drown in comparison, envy, noise, and the tragedy is, you think others are the cause. But they are not your tormentors. They are mirrors reflecting what you refuse to face within. When someone's words wound you deeply, it is not their insult that hurts. It's your unexamined need to be seen a certain way. The Stoics called this enslavement, the mind chained by its own desires and aversions. But here lies the turning point. The moment you begin to watch your emotions instead of obeying them, everything changes. Awareness is liberation. Once you can name what you feel, anger, fear, shame, pride, it no longer commands you. You become the observer, not the storm. Marcus Aurelius trained this daily. Each night he examined his day, asking not what went wrong, but what moved me. That small act, done consistently, forged an emperor who could lead without losing himself to rage or despair. Emotional intelligence is not softness, it is precision. It is the discipline of responding with clarity instead of reacting with chaos. Imagine standing in the center of a storm and realizing you do not need to be the wind, you can be the mountain. That is the essence of Stoic calm. Not the absence of emotion, but the presence of control. The ability to pause when insulted, to breathe when provoked, to wait when all within you screams to act. Each pause is power. Each breath is command. And yet, people think this art belongs only in philosophy books or therapy rooms. It does not. It belongs in boardrooms, in kitchens, in late-night arguments, in quiet moments when your thoughts turn against you. Because the first relationship emotional intelligence heals is not with others, it is with yourself. If you cannot read your own moods, you cannot read the world. If you cannot sit with your own discomfort, you will forever seek comfort in noise, validation, or distraction. A mature mind does not mean a numb one. It means being able to look at your anger and say, "I see you." To face sadness and whisper, "You are not all of me." To feel jealousy rise and answer, "You will pass." The wise do not deny emotion. They guide it like a river, letting it flow, but never letting it flood the village. In this way, life becomes simpler. You no longer need to control others to feel safe. You no longer chase approval to feel worthy. You return again and again to the still point within. There is a quiet strength in those who walk this path. They do not explode when provoked. They do not break when plans collapse. They do not need applause to act with integrity. When the world shouts, they remain unmoved, not cold, but centered. Their peace cannot be stolen because it is not stored in others. It lives in their awareness. And in a time when people are proud of being reactive, this kind of steadiness becomes rare. From here, we begin the training. Because knowing is not mastery. You cannot think your way into control, you must practice it. The Stoics treated the mind as a muscle. They lifted silence instead of weights. They rehearsed patience instead of speeches. Every small irritation, every delay, every insult became a training ground. When you pause before reacting, you are sharpening the sword of reason. When you hold your tongue, you are polishing the shield of restraint. Each moment of composure is a quiet victory no one sees, but it shapes you more than applause ever could. Emotional intelligence, in the end, is not about being pleasant or agreeable. It is about being free. Free from the tyranny of impulse. Free from the manipulations of others. Free from the storm of your own mind. It is a survival skill for the soul, because the world will test you through loss, rejection, misunderstanding. And when it does, your calm becomes your armor. Your awareness becomes your compass. Your discipline becomes your sanctuary. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That is the essence of this art, not perfection, but progress. Each day you learn to pause longer, speak softer, see clearer. Each moment you choose understanding over reaction, you reclaim a piece of your peace. Now imagine standing before your own reflection, not as who the world told you to be, but as who you are beneath the noise. The one who no longer needs to prove, to fight, to impress. The one who can simply be, steady and awake. That is where emotional intelligence leads, not to applause, but to freedom. And from this stillness, everything else begins. As we step into the second chapter, imagine this. You stand before a mirror, but the reflection isn't just your face, it's your mind. Every flicker of irritation, every flash of joy, every quiet ache of loneliness passes like shadows across the glass. Yet most of us never look long enough to see what's truly there. We rush past our emotions as if speed could save us from them. But here's the truth. If you cannot see what's happening inside you, you cannot understand it. And what you cannot understand, you cannot guide. Self-awareness is not a trick of modern wisdom. It is the oldest Stoic discipline, the beginning of mastery. It's the doorway into your inner world. Step through it, and you step into the real battlefield, the one between impulse and intention, between reaction and reason. The moment you notice your anger rising, you've already won half the war, because you're no longer the anger itself, you're the observer. That single instant, that space between what happens and how you respond, is where freedom lives. The Stoics never told us to destroy emotion. They warned us against being ruled by it. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Self-awareness is the art of stepping outside the wave. You watch it rise, you feel its pull, but you no longer drown in it. It doesn't make life easier, it makes it real. It's not comfort, it's clarity. In a world addicted to motion, pausing to feel is rebellion. When everything around you demands reaction, awareness becomes resistance. Think of your mind as a city at rush hour, horns blaring, people shouting, streets overflowing with thoughts and moods and fears. You can't close the gates and make it silent, but you can rise above the noise. From that height, you can finally see. Who is shouting? Why did they come? That is what awareness feels like, not escape, but elevation. You stop fighting the crowd and start understanding it. Some people move through life like clear mirrors. They feel anger, sadness, excitement, and they know why. They face it, learn from it, and move forward untouched by its claws. Others drift through fog. They feel everything but can name nothing. They are carried by emotion without a map, like ships with torn sails. And then there are those who recognize their pain, but remain still, treating their emotions like sentences carved in stone. They endure rather than evolve. But endurance without awareness is just another form of blindness. To live without understanding your emotions is to lose direction while still moving. You collide with others, with yourself, without knowing why. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." But adversity isn't always external. The hardest storms are internal, the ones you don't talk about, the ones that twist silently beneath the surface. Most people only notice their disconnection when it's too late, when they've drifted too far from who they are. There's an old story that echoes this truth. A man once stood at the edge of his own sanity, his mind fractured after an accident. Before, he was steady and respected, a leader of men. Afterward, something within him shattered. His discipline vanished. His temper grew wild. His gentleness turned to rage. The world saw the same face, but the person behind it was gone. What struck scholars wasn't just the injury, it was what it revealed. That when the part of us that governs awareness is damaged, everything else unravels. We lose not just control, but character. Now, most of us will never be struck by such tragedy. Yet every day we suffer invisible wounds that dull our awareness all the same, pressures that harden us, childhood patterns we never question, routines that numb our senses. They are the silent rods lodged in our minds, bending our nature without us knowing. You wake up, go to work, reply to messages, smile for pictures, but inside, something feels disconnected. You no longer know what you feel, only that you feel too much or nothing at all. That is the quiet erosion of self. So what do we do? The Stoic answer is simple, but not easy. We learn to listen again. Each morning before the world invades, sit in stillness and ask, what am I feeling today? Don't make it poetic, make it honest. When anger comes, pause and ask, what inside me just got hurt? When anxiety rises, don't mask it, say, I'm afraid. Naming an emotion is not weakness, it is command. You cannot master what you refuse to see. From there, seek your foundation. What values anchor you? What principles remain non-negotiable even when your emotions flare? Honor, gratitude, integrity. Once you define them, you'll find that decisions become clearer. You'll act not from mood, but from meaning. And if courage allows, ask someone close to you, do I let my emotions lead me? Do I wound others without noticing? Their answers may sting, but truth often enters through discomfort. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, if someone can prove me wrong, I will gladly change, for I seek the truth, not victory. That humility is self-awareness in motion. Remember this, emotions, whether joy or fury, are not your enemies. They are messages from within. Anger says, something you value feels threatened. Fear says, you've stepped beyond the known. Sadness says, something dear has changed. They are not flaws, they are signals. Just as physical pain warns of injury, emotional pain warns of imbalance. The question is not, how do I silence them? The question is, will I listen? Most never do. They sprint through life anesthetized by distraction, scrolling, drinking, working, anything but feeling. They run from themselves. But you can stop. You can turn inward. You can meet your own eyes and say, I am ready to see. Because the moment you look honestly, you reclaim what was lost. Choice. Awareness is not a luxury, it's survival. You cannot rebuild your mind like a craftsman mends wood, but you can train it like a soldier hones discipline. The Stoics treated reflection as a daily drill. Each evening they examined their day not to punish themselves, but to strengthen their command. They asked, where did I lose control? Where did I act with virtue? Through that ritual, they forged calm from chaos. And so must we. The practice of awareness is not about perfection, it's about precision. A clear mind does not mean an untroubled life. It means knowing the terrain of your own soul so well that no emotion can ambush you. It means seeing anger as a signal, not a verdict. Fear as a lesson, not a curse. It means being able to say, yes, I feel this, but I choose how to move through it. Seneca said, he who is brave is free, and this is bravery, to stand inside your own storm and not be swept away. To watch emotion without letting it define you, to know that you are not the wave, you are the ocean. Awareness doesn't make the tide stop, it teaches you how to navigate it. So when the next rush of emotion comes, pause. Don't label it good or bad. Don't flee. Step back. Breathe. Name it. Ask what it's trying to tell you. Every time you do, you sharpen your inner vision. You return to yourself. You rise a little higher above the noise, and from that height, the path ahead begins to clear. Because once you can see your emotions, the next question emerges naturally. How do you steer them? How do you take what you feel and shape it into something deliberate, something dignified? This is where awareness meets discipline. This is where understanding becomes strength. From here, we move forward to the next lesson, where knowing what you feel becomes the foundation for mastering how you act, where the Stoic art of emotional regulation turns awareness into wisdom, and where clarity becomes calm in motion. Moving into the third chapter, picture this: a single moment, one sentence spoken in anger, one message sent too soon, one glare you didn't mean, can burn a bridge you spent years building. It happens fast. A few seconds of fire, then silence. And afterward, what keeps you awake at night isn't the mistake itself, it's the echo that follows. Why did I let my emotions take control? That quiet question has haunted emperors, soldiers, lovers, and leaders alike. Because mastering your response is not a moral ornament, it's a survival skill. The Stoics knew this centuries ago. They didn't pretend to be emotionless. They studied emotion like warriors study terrain. They gave each feeling a name, a purpose, a limit. They understood that the battle is never against anger or fear. It's against the moment you stop noticing them. Seneca wrote, "Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more harmful to us than the injury that provokes it." That is the heart of discipline. The pause. The breath between stimulus and response. The invisible space where freedom lives. Imagine yourself as a sailor in a sudden storm. The waves rise. Your instinct screams to fight them. But the Stoic doesn't thrash. He adjusts the sails. He steadies the hand on the rudder. The wind is still wild, but his course remains straight. That's what emotional regulation truly is, not suppression, but skillful navigation. You cannot control the sea, but you can command your ship. Every reckless reaction begins the same way. A spark in the mind that catches faster than thought. The Stoics called it the first movement, the reflex before reason arrives. It's the part of you that flares before wisdom wakes. You've felt it before. The sting of a careless comment, the urge to defend, the rush to prove you're right. In that instant, your reason is overthrown by instinct. You are no longer the captain. You are the storm itself. But here's the hidden power of awareness. If you can buy yourself even a heartbeat before reacting, the whole course of your life can change. The Stoics practiced this pause daily. They called it the gap. Marcus Aurelius described it as the moment between being struck and striking back. Within that small space lies immense strength. While others shout, you breathe. While others attack, you observe. The mind that waits becomes the mind that rules. There's a story that captures this perfectly. Long ago, a leader was betrayed by his most trusted ally. The betrayal burned through him like fire. That night, he wrote a letter so sharp it could have destroyed the man's reputation forever. But when dawn came, he didn't send it. He folded the letter, sealed it, and wrote across the top, "Not sent." Later, when his anger cooled, he saw that in sparing another, he had saved himself. The Stoics would have admired that restraint. To act from reason rather than rage is not weakness, it's power refined. We all have our own letters never sent, the text we type and delete, the words we swallow when silence is wiser, the argument we choose not to win. These quiet victories never make noise, yet they are the proof of strength. Every time you resist the impulse to react, you keep your dignity intact. Every time you wait, you rise above. Another Stoic technique was what we now call reframing, though they would have simply called it philosophy in action. When someone interrupts you, it's easy to think, they don't respect me. But what if they're anxious, uncertain, or trying to belong? The event stays the same. The story changes, and when the story changes, so does your peace. As Epictetus said, it's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Perception is the hinge of serenity. Emotions move through us like tides, but the body is the first shore they touch. A clenched jaw, a tight chest, a shallow breath. These are not random, they are messengers. When you learn to listen, you notice the storm before it breaks. The Stoics trained themselves to be watchful even in small discomforts. A delay, an insult, a rejection, each became a test of composure. They believed that when you master the small waves, the large ones will not drown you. In moments of tension, the simplest acts become sacred. Feel your feet on the ground. Breathe deeply. Let the air fill your lungs as if it were returning reason to its throne. These grounding moments are not spiritual abstractions. They're the most practical acts of self-defense, because when the mind races, the body anchors you back to truth. You exist here now, not in the imagined battlefield of the mind, but no regulation can last if your life is ruled by exhaustion. When the mind is overworked and the soul neglected, emotion takes command. The Stoics spoke often of moderation, not as denial, but as maintenance. Walk daily. Eat simply. Breathe with intention. A river that overflows destroys its banks, but one that flows steadily nourishes all it touches. Calm is not found in grand gestures. It's built in quiet habits, repeated with care. Some emotions, however, are too heavy to hold alone. The Stoics never suggested burying them. They wrote, they reflected, they confided in friends who sought virtue, not gossip. They believed that expressing emotion through reason purified it, while venting it through anger corrupted it. Unspoken emotions ferment, they sour the soul. So, write them out. Speak them wisely. Release them without letting them rule you. The world today celebrates reaction, the loudest voice, the fastest opinion, the instant comeback. But the Stoic knows that true power hides in stillness, to pause before replying, to walk away from what insults your peace, to say less but mean more. The one who slows down doesn't fall behind. They simply refuse to be dragged by every passing storm. Do not confuse composure with indifference. The one who stays calm in chaos feels as deeply as anyone else, perhaps more so, but they have learned that emotion is fuel, not fire. They use it to build, not burn. The Stoic warrior does not strike back when provoked. He steadies his stance and answers with clarity, because he knows that those who cannot control themselves will always be controlled by others. You will stumble, you will forget, you will speak too soon or act too harshly. But the moment you see what happened, you are already stronger. Growth begins not in perfection, but in the pause that follows a mistake. If today you manage to count to 3 before reacting, that is victory. If tomorrow you breathe through frustration a second longer, that is progress. Every breath of restraint expands your freedom. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. When the world around you breaks into noise, remember, there is still one place left untouched: the quiet space within, the gap between feeling and response. That is where your peace lives. Protect it fiercely, and once you can stand unshaken in that stillness, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see others more clearly. You hear what is unsaid in their words, what trembles behind their silence. Because only when you've mastered your own emotions can you truly step into someone else's. That's where we go next. The art of connection, the language beyond words, the Stoic way of reaching another soul without losing your own. Advancing to the 4th chapter, imagine this. You walk into a room and say all the right words, yet somehow the air shifts. Eyes glance away, voices cool, and you can't quite name why. You spoke with reason, you offered value, but something invisible went wrong. It wasn't logic that failed you. It was awareness. The quiet sensitivity that detects what reason alone cannot. A person can be brilliant, capable, and ambitious. But if they lack the ability to read the emotional rhythm of a moment, to sense tension, warmth, unease, they risk being misunderstood. People may see them as arrogant or detached when in truth they are only unaware. Stoicism teaches that strength without perception is blindness in motion. The wise do not speak merely to express, they listen to perceive. They do not dominate a conversation, they balance it. And that balance, subtle and disciplined, is the soul of all meaningful connection. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." There is never any need to get worked up or to trouble your soul. In conversation, that wisdom becomes a compass. It reminds us that silence, when chosen wisely, is not weakness, it's precision. When someone speaks to you with sharpness, the ordinary person reacts. The Stoic pauses. They see not just the words, but the wound behind them. And instead of adding fire to fire, they say calmly, "You seem troubled. Is something wrong?" In that one line, a wall becomes a bridge. The art of social intelligence is not manipulation. It's compassion disciplined by clarity. It's the courage to slow down and notice what others miss, the flicker of discomfort in an eye, the hesitation before a word, the tension beneath a smile. Seneca once said, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." That kindness does not always come in praise. Sometimes it comes in presence. In simply being there, aware, grounded, and willing to understand. Think about the times you misread someone, a colleague's short message you took as coldness, a friend's silence you took as rejection. Later, you found out they were simply tired, distracted, or in pain. How many conflicts are born not from malice, but from misinterpretation? The Stoics' discipline is to pause before judgment, to ask, what might I be missing here? That one question has the power to transform the entire tone of your life. I once met a man who nearly lost his most important client over an email. The client had written, "No need for more details." He took it as dismissal, rage boiling under his calm reply. But before sending it, he stopped. He called instead. On the other end of the line, a weary voice confessed, "I'm sorry. I'm sick and exhausted. I just wanted to wrap this up." The man hung up, changed. He realized it wasn't the client who almost ended the deal, it was his assumption. Stoicism calls us to see beyond appearances, to wait until truth reveals itself, even in small things. Social intelligence begins with the body. Words lie, but the body rarely does. The slumped shoulder, the tightened jaw, the restless glance, these are sentences in a silent language. And those who can read it move through the world with quiet grace. They sense storms before they form. They can walk into a room and by simply breathing calmly, shift its temperature. I once met a hospital receptionist like that. It was lunchtime. Everyone looked tired. I expected indifference. but she looked up, smiled faintly and said, "You look like you're in a hurry. Let me help you first." She didn't just do her job, she saw me. That is social mastery, understanding without words. But what happens when the air turns heavy, when conflict enters the room? You raise your voice, they raise theirs, and reason vanishes. Here's where the Stoic separates themselves from the crowd. They lower their tone. They say, "I'm not trying to fight, I want to understand." That single sentence can end a war, because in that moment you choose understanding over victory, control over chaos. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." True communication is never about winning, it's about clarity. You don't need to say everything you think, you need to make what matters understood. Sometimes a look of sincerity says more than 1,000 speeches. A simple, "I see you can cool a temper faster than argument ever could." On the other hand, a glance too sharp or a silence too long can harden walls you'll spend years trying to break. Presence is the true language of the Stoic. It says everything without shouting once. In some cultures, people say yes when they mean no, just to preserve harmony. Others hide pain behind courtesy. The Stoic learns to move carefully among these hidden meanings, not to judge, but to perceive, to sense what words conceal. Because emotional awareness in social life isn't luxury anymore, it's survival. It's how we stay human in a world that rewards reaction more than reflection. There's a quiet strength in those who observe before they respond. They are not cold, they are composed. They do not mirror the chaos of others, they neutralize it. In every conversation, they plant peace. They may walk away unpraised, but they leave the room better than they found it. This is the power of awareness guided by virtue. Conflicts, however, are not always with strangers. They happen with friends, with family, with those closest to us. You argue, voices rise, words sharpen. Then suddenly a pause. One of you breathes, softens, and says, "I want to understand you, not fight you." That moment of humility can repair what anger nearly destroyed. This is what Stoicism looks like in love, not withdrawal, but wisdom. Even feedback, when handled with awareness, becomes medicine. I once told a friend he often cut people off mid-sentence. He flared up. Days passed. Then he returned and thanked me. "No one ever told me that before," he said. He wasn't angry anymore, just aware. True friendship, like true communication, depends on courage. The courage to say what's real without humiliation and to receive what's real without defense. Social intelligence is not built in classrooms or workshops. It's built in quiet attention, one conversation at a time. Every interaction is training. Every misunderstanding is feedback. Every silence is a chance to see deeper. When you begin to truly listen to words, to tone, to breath, to what remains unsaid, you stop surviving relationships and start nurturing them. Be humble enough to adapt. Be curious enough to keep learning. Let your eyes see beyond appearances and your voice carry understanding, not judgment. Let every dialogue refine you into someone steadier, kinder, sharper. And when you finally learn to read the heart behind the words, when you can sense the truth behind silence, you'll find that social skill isn't just about connecting with others. It's about being fully present in the moment you share. From here, we move into the next depth of emotional mastery. Beyond understanding others' words lies something rarer, the ability to feel what they cannot say. The quiet power of empathy, the bridge between minds and souls. Entering the 5th chapter, let's slow down. Life often moves so quickly that we forget how connection is truly built, not through grand gestures or perfect words, but through fleeting moments so quiet they escape memory. A glance without judgment, a touch without expectation, a presence without pressure. They seem small, yet they form the invisible architecture of trust between souls. These are the threads that weave the tapestry of human warmth. They ask nothing, they prove nothing, but they remain steady, unseen, irreplaceable. We are conditioned to believe that healing requires wisdom, eloquence, or solutions. That to ease someone's pain, we must say something profound. But most of the time, people don't need advice. They need presence. They don't need our words. They need our stillness. The Stoics understood this. Empathy to them was not a sentimental virtue. It was awareness sharpened into compassion. The ability to remain calm enough to stay when another trembles. To hold space, not to fix, but to witness. When someone cries, you don't always need to say, "I understand." Sometimes the only thing that matters is that you don't leave. In this world of endless noise, being quietly present has become rare. Most people rush to reply, to advise, to fill silence as if silence were failure. But true empathy begins when you stop rushing. It's a deliberate pause, a sacred decision to listen without interruption, without inserting your story into theirs. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." That is empathy in practice, not indulgence, but balance. You listen deeply, yet hold your composure. You care without losing yourself. You understand without being consumed. Empathy has layers, and each one deepens our humanity. The first is the ability to understand another's reasoning, to see the path that led them to their pain. The second is the ability to feel with them, to allow your own heart to echo their sorrow without drowning in it. And the final, the highest form, is compassion, when understanding and feeling move you to act. Not from obligation, but from alignment with virtue. The Stoics called this the strength of the rational soul, a heart that feels deeply yet acts wisely. The Stoic doesn't weep for the sake of pity. They stand with the sufferer, calm and unwavering, offering what few can, a steady presence when the world is falling apart. Seneca wrote, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage. To stand beside someone in their suffering without turning away is exactly that kind of courage. It demands not pity, but endurance. The strength to remain open in the face of another's pain without trying to escape it. But if empathy is so vital, why do we fail at it so often? Why do we listen yet not understand? Why do we live beside one another and still feel alone? The answer lies in our nature. Humanity evolved to survive, not necessarily to connect. When you feel threatened or insulted, your instincts awaken before your wisdom does. Your body flares, your pulse rises, your breath shortens. Before you've even had time to think, the ancient animal within has already chosen fight or flight. Stoicism calls this the first movement, the reflex of emotion that comes uninvited. Empathy, then, is rebellion, a conscious act against the noise of instinct. So when someone seems cold or distant, instead of judging, you pause. You ask quietly within, what might this person be carrying that I cannot see? Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're trying to hold themselves together. Maybe silence is their last defense. You don't need to be right about your guesses, just making them softens your stance. They become bridges that pull you out of your own mind and into another's world. Empathy does not excuse, but it understands, and that understanding is the beginning of peace. Think of those who live without this awareness. They speak perfectly, reason clearly, yet something vital is missing. They can describe emotion, but cannot feel it. They are sharp but hollow, intelligent yet untouched by warmth. Talking to them feels like conversing with a machine, efficient but empty. Stoicism warns against this cold perfection. To live without empathy is to live without pulse. Reason without compassion is not wisdom, it's calculation. So how do we train empathy? The same way we train every virtue, with practice and presence. The next time someone shares something vulnerable, resist the urge to answer with your own story. Just listen. When someone lashes out, look beyond the surface. Anger is rarely anger. It's pain wearing armor. And when someone behaves strangely, ask yourself, if I had lived their life, carried their wounds, would I be any different? This is not moral superiority, it's humility in motion. Even science echoes Stoic truth. When you name an emotion, whether your own or another's, its grip weakens. Saying you look hurt instead of stop being so sensitive opens a door. It reminds the other person of their humanity. Naming emotion gives it shape, and what a shape can be held, examined, understood. The Stoics didn't have modern terms for this, but they practiced it daily. They journaled to give form to their feelings. They reflected to keep them from mutiny. There is no formula for empathy. It's not learned from books or quotes. It's built moment by moment through the courage to pay attention. You will fail sometimes. You will miss the signs. You'll react when you should have paused. You'll walk away when you should have stayed. But the effort, the choice to return and try again, is what refines the soul. Empathy is not about perfection, it's about persistence. Every time you choose awareness over apathy, you are shaping yourself into something rarer, a trustworthy soul in a world of clever minds. Stoicism never asked us to abandon emotion. It asked us to understand its rightful place, to feel deeply without being enslaved, to act justly without seeking praise. When you begin to see why people hurt, you begin to live with gentleness. You start doing what's right, not because someone told you to, but because it aligns with your nature. You stop demanding that others heal on your schedule. You become the kind of person who steadies others simply by being steady yourself. And if you've ever felt inadequate, too distant, too numb, too clumsy in the language of compassion, begin again. Empathy doesn't demand perfection. It asks for attention. It asks that you observe yourself before judging others. Because when you understand your own pain, you stop taking everything personally. You see yourself in everyone. And in that moment, the world grows a little softer. But to keep this softness alive, to remain open and kind in a world that often misunderstands or wounds you, you'll need another kind of strength, one that burns quietly, faithfully, even in darkness. A fire that does not fade when life grows cold. From here, we move into that fire, the Stoic art of inner motivation, the force that keeps you grounded, purposeful, and unbroken when the world no longer makes sense. Now imagine the moment when all noise fades. The phone is silent. The world isn't watching. No one's calling your name. You stand in a quiet room and there's only you. No deadlines, no applause, no pressure. That's where the truth of strength begins. The Stoics called it inner fire, the quiet energy that burns even when no one else believes in you, because no one can truly show up for others if they're running on empty. No one can stay grounded if they keep trying to escape themselves. And no one can build something lasting if their soul flickers out whenever the world looks away. This is the fifth pillar. The art of self-motivation. The kind that doesn't roar with excitement but hums with conviction. The kind that doesn't need a stage or a soundtrack. The kind that stays lit through silence, repetition, and pain. Modern minds call it drive. The Stoics called it duty. They understood that when emotion fails, discipline takes over. When passion fades, purpose remains. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being." He didn't rise for reward. He rose because existence itself demanded integrity. That's what separates the fleeting from the faithful. Anyone can act when inspired. The wise act because it's right. The untrained mind waits for feeling. The disciplined one builds it. You think you need motivation to move. The Stoics would tell you, you need movement to find motivation. Action is the spark. Consistency is the flame. Momentum is the light that follows. But look around. Most people don't fail for lack of knowledge or talent. They fail because they've lived too long by borrowed purpose. They chase the next reward, the next validation, the next applause, and when silence comes, they collapse. They don't know what matters to them anymore. Their body works, but their spirit's gone absent. Their days are full, but their life feels empty. The Stoics didn't live that way. They didn't perform for approval. They didn't ask the world to confirm their worth. They simply acted in alignment with their values, and that in itself was enough. So ask yourself, what do you serve when no one's looking? What drives you when nothing external pulls? Because self-motivation begins not with excitement, but with confrontation, with that moment when you see clearly how often you've betrayed your own intentions, when you said tomorrow, but meant never, when you chose comfort over growth. Each small surrender leaves a scar invisible to others, but heavy to carry. Every time you procrastinate, you don't just delay progress. You tell yourself you can't be trusted. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you weaken the bond between who you are and who you could be. The Stoics warned against this quiet corrosion of will. They called it slavery to desire, the habit of letting feelings dictate action. So, how do you reverse it? Start small. Choose one task each morning that matters most and finish it. Call it your first victory, then build a second and a third. Momentum feeds faith. When your mind starts whispering, "Not today," do it anyway. You don't need to love the process to honor it. Seneca said, "The man who is brave is free." Freedom in this sense isn't leisure, it's mastery over resistance. Think of motivation like an oil lamp. You don't need to fill it completely before you light it. You just need one drop of oil, one spark, one breath of courage. Your job isn't to light the whole room at once, it's to keep the flame from dying. A small fire maintained daily will outlast any burst of inspiration. To sustain it, shape your surroundings. The Stoics knew environment molds the mind. If you live among complainers, you'll forget your strength. If your space is cluttered, your focus will scatter. Clean your room as you would your thoughts. Order outside creates order within. Then create rituals that summon action. A cup of water before writing, a short walk before work, a quiet prayer before effort. These habits become the rhythm that steadies your will. And yes, rest. Rest is not weakness, it's wisdom. Even the strongest warriors sheathe their blades. The question isn't whether you rest, but why. Is it recovery or avoidance? Is it restoration or escape? The Stoics practiced balance. They worked with intensity, but they also withdrew to reflect, to regain the clarity that makes endurance possible. Self-motivation doesn't mean conquering the world. It means conquering the impulse to surrender. It means showing up again and again, not because it's easy, but because your spirit demands consistency more than comfort. When you keep going, even when empty, something shifts. The noise fades, the chaos subsides. And in that stillness, you begin to recognize yourself again. The self that endures, that acts without waiting for praise, that does what's right simply because it's right. At the end of each day, the Stoics asked one question: did I act according to my nature or react to the world? Ask yourself the same tonight. If the answer makes you uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is your awakening. It's the voice of your potential asking for proof. You don't need to win every day, you just need to show up honestly for the battle within. Because when you master self-motivation, you stop being ruled by moods. You become your own source of motion. You no longer wait for energy, you create it. You no longer beg for direction, you walk your own path. And from that place of still, unshakable purpose, the next lesson emerges naturally: how to speak so others feel your truth, not through volume or persuasion, but through presence. Because when your fire burns steady within, every word you speak carries its light. At this stage, we arrive at one of the hardest lessons to live: communication, the bridge that builds or burns every bond we have. In today's world, it's easier than ever to connect, but harder than ever to truly understand one another. We speak faster, reply quicker, share endlessly, and yet we rarely listen. We scroll through lives instead of stepping into them. The more we talk, the less we seem to hear. It's not because we've stopped caring. It's because we've stopped pausing long enough to see what the other person is really saying beneath their words. A careless phrase can wound deeper than a blade. A dismissive look can plant a resentment that blooms in silence. One thoughtless reaction can undo years of trust. The Stoics understood this long before the modern world turned communication into noise. They knew that words are weapons, and like any weapon, they demand discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Better to trip with the feet than with the tongue." He knew that damage done by words often can't be undone by apologies. Have you ever argued for hours, only to forget what started the fight? Or stood in silence, feeling wronged but unable to speak without making things worse? Or worse still, said something cruel to someone you love, not because you meant it, but because your own pain needed a target? That's how most conflicts begin, not from malice, but from unmanaged emotion. And the Stoics would remind us, emotion isn't the enemy, it's the unexamined emotion that destroys. Now imagine this. Olivia, a young sales rep, stands before her team after finishing a long presentation. Her colleague Mark smirks and says, "I guess Olivia plans to sell this with a smile instead of numbers." The room erupts in laughter. Her chest tightens. She could snap back, storm off, or freeze in shame. Instead, she takes a breath, smiles faintly and says, "Thanks for the reminder, Mark. Next time, I'll bring the data. Hope you'll still be smiling then." Silence, no rage, no humiliation, just composure. Olivia didn't suppress her emotion, she guided it. That's Stoic communication in motion, responding with clarity, not impulse. The goal isn't to dominate, it's to stay dignified. Others can insult you, but they can't take your character unless you hand it over. That's what Epictetus meant when he said, "No one can harm you without your consent." Olivia's calm wasn't weakness, it was wisdom, because she refused to let someone else's words decide who she would become in that moment. Now picture another scene. John returns home after a long day. The house is messy, dinner's undone, and his partner Emily sits scrolling her phone. Exhaustion turns to anger. "What have you been doing all day?" he snaps. Emily fires back. "You think I've been relaxing? You're the one avoiding chores." What started as frustration becomes war. Yet beneath the shouting, both are crying out for the same thing: to be seen, to be heard, to be loved. If John had paused for one breath, asked, "Is my anger about the mess or about feeling unseen?" everything could have shifted. He could have said instead, "I was hoping for some calm tonight. Maybe you had a hard day too." One sentence of understanding could have saved the night. That's emotional intelligence in practice, the art of replacing judgment with curiosity, pride with empathy. The Stoics never asked us to silence emotion. They asked us to slow it down, to give reason time to catch up. Seneca wrote, "Anger, if not restrained, is more harmful than the injury that provokes it." Every pause is a small act of mercy for yourself and for others. And then there's Daniel, a student accused of not pulling his weight in a group project. His instinct is to retaliate, to expose the truth and shame those who blamed him. But then he remembers the teaching of Epictetus. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. So instead, he sends a short message, calm, factual, polite. He includes evidence, but no venom. The misunderstanding clears, and Daniel walks away with something better than vindication, his peace. This is what the Stoics trained for, not to avoid conflict, but to master it from within. They knew that arguments often end, not because someone wins, but because someone decides not to lose themselves in the process. So how do we practice this in daily life? Forget formulas. You only need 3 things: pause, name, and choose. Pause before reacting. That space is power. Name what you feel. I'm hurt. I'm angry. I'm afraid. Naming disarms emotion. It stops it from disguising itself as logic. And then choose, not what habit dictates, but what integrity demands. Because every conversation tests one question. Do you want to win, or do you want to understand? Ask yourself, what matters more, being right or keeping the relationship intact? Pride seeks victory. Wisdom seeks harmony. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take a breath and say nothing. Sometimes the strongest argument is a gentle silence. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, the best revenge is to be unlike your enemy. The mature person doesn't need to crush others to feel strong. They can stop even when they know they could win. That kind of restraint, measured, deliberate, compassionate, isn't weakness. It's mastery. And mastery earns more respect than any clever comeback ever could. True communication isn't about speaking perfectly. It's about being present fully. The best communicators don't fill every silence. They honor it. They don't talk to prove. They talk to connect. They understand that dignity isn't in domination, but in choosing their words with care. And when you take this awareness into the world, into the workplace, into your friendships, into your family, you'll see what the Stoics meant when they said that virtue is its own reward. Because you'll start walking through chaos without being dragged by it. You'll sit in meetings with backstabbers and not be poisoned by bitterness. You'll face disrespect and choose to remain composed. That's when communication becomes more than a skill. It becomes strength. A quiet force that protects your peace while guiding others toward theirs. And from this understanding of how to hold your words, your tone, your presence, the journey deepens. Because beyond speaking with clarity lies another realm of wisdom, the battlefield of the mind itself. the place where emotions, stress, and ambition collide every single day. From here, we move into that proving ground, the workplace, the modern arena where stoic calm is tested, and where your philosophy must become your armor. Entering the 8th chapter, let's walk into a place most people mistake for logic, the modern workplace. Rows of screens glowing cold blue, the hum of air conditioning drowning human breath. Smiles stretched thin over exhaustion. In these rooms, emotions are treated like background noise, something to mute, not manage, as if reason alone could carry every conversation, every decision, every loss. But no matter how much we try to hide them, emotions are always there. They sit in the silence between deadlines. They tighten the air in meetings. They echo in the messages left unanswered. The Stoics would remind us, what you refuse to acknowledge still governs you. In truth, the workplace is not run by spreadsheets, but by states of mind. Behind every task, every strategy, there's a pulse. A leader who understands that pulse commands not just a team, but a spirit. Emotional intelligence, the overlooked sibling of intellect, is the quiet engine that keeps organizations from crumbling under stress. A wise leader senses tension before it erupts, pauses before reacting, and speaks not to impress, but to clarify. They don't let anger dictate decisions or pride turn meetings into battlefields. They turn emotion into information, and that's not softness, it's mastery. Think of two leaders. One, brilliant but volatile, lets frustration steer his words. The other, equally sharp, takes a breath before speaking. The first gains obedience, the second earns trust. Trust lasts longer. The Stoics called this discipline sophrosine, measured self-control rooted in awareness. They knew that reason without empathy becomes tyranny. True authority flows not from dominance, but from calm presence. Now imagine a manager saying, "You're messing everything up." Blunt, efficient, but destructive. Compare that to, "You did this part well. Here's where we can grow, and I know you can do it." The difference isn't politeness, it's awareness. The second message doesn't dilute truth, it delivers it with humanity. Seneca once wrote, "To bear trials with a calm mind robs misfortune of its strength." The same applies to conflict. Delivering truth with composure turns confrontation into progress. That's why companies that look beyond technical brilliance are now searching for emotional wisdom. Skills can be taught. Awareness must be cultivated. A genius who can't communicate becomes a bottleneck. A worker who can't regulate stress becomes a hazard. The Stoics would say that brilliance without virtue collapses under its own weight. In teams where each person guards only their own pride, no project survives. But when individuals choose awareness over ego, everything aligns. Consider how the wise move through tension. When chaos stirs in a meeting, the untrained lash out or retreat. The grounded pause, observe, and ask the quiet question, what's really happening here? Instead of blaming, they inquire. Instead of silencing emotion, they translate it. Power used to control breeds fear. Power used to understand breeds loyalty. And this intelligence doesn't belong only to leaders. It belongs to everyone who shows up with awareness, the intern who listens deeply when no one else does, the colleague who notices fatigue in another's eyes and checks in, the team member who absorbs tension without mirroring it. These acts are invisible, yet they form the backbone of cultures people actually want to belong to. But don't mistake EQ for a checklist. It isn't built from seminars or slogans. It's forged in moments that test your patience after a failed pitch, during an unfair critique, when a partner takes credit for your work. The Stoics called these the training grounds of the soul. You don't practice calm in theory, you practice it in discomfort. Each time you respond with clarity instead of complaint, you grow more unshakable. Picture that person in your office who steadies the room. They don't shout, they don't compete, yet somehow everyone breathes easier around them. That's not charisma, it's composure. It's a quiet virtue that needs no introduction. They speak truth without cruelty, hold firm without arrogance, and give direction without ego. Their presence restores balance. They don't force respect, they embody it. And, in diverse teams, this awareness becomes the glue. Diversity of thought and culture doesn't automatically create inclusion. It takes empathy in action, the courage to question your own bias, to confront the subtle habits that wound others. Emotional intelligence means recognizing that what feels normal to you might feel dismissive to someone else. It's not guilt, it's growth. Marcus Aurelius said, "What injures the hive injures the bee." To harm one is to weaken the whole. Zoom out and you'll find a deeper layer, the emotional intelligence of a group. A team's strength is never just in shared goals, but in shared safety. The best teams disagree often, but they do so with respect. They argue fiercely about ideas, not identities. They resolve tension before it hardens into resentment. In such teams, EQ is not a soft skill, it's the operating system. They understand that clarity is kindness and that listening is leadership. So, where does one begin? Not in books, in moments. In your next meeting, watch what happens when conflict rises. Notice your own heartbeat. Observe your impulse before it becomes action. When someone cuts you off, choose understanding over retaliation. When you feel overlooked, breathe before reacting. Every pause is a repetition in the gym of the mind. Each decision to stay grounded strengthens a muscle that no title can buy. Your career in the end won't be defined by how much you achieve, but by how people felt working alongside you. They may forget your strategies, your reports, your deadlines, but they will remember how you made them feel when pressure was high. They'll remember the calm in your eyes when things fell apart. Because calm, like chaos, is contagious. And when the office lights dim and the day is over, this skill doesn't stay behind. It follows you home, into the kitchen, into arguments with your partner, into late-night talks with your child who needs not your advice, but your attention. The same awareness that softens tension in meetings will soften your tone at the dinner table. If managing emotions at work is a challenge, try it where love makes everything feel personal. That's the next battlefield, not the boardroom, but your living room. Because the truest test of emotional mastery is not how you perform under pressure, but how you remain kind when you're tired, misunderstood, or hurt by those closest to you. And that's where we go next, into the heart of family, where philosophy meets tenderness, and where the Stoic learns that strength and gentleness were never opposites, but two halves of the same virtue. Now imagine the place where your philosophy is truly tested, not in meetings, not under deadlines, but at home. The one place where masks fall, where love has no contract, and where even a single careless word can wound deeper than any insult from a stranger. You can stay composed before your boss, you can smile through pressure in a boardroom, but when the door closes and it's just you, your partner, your child, your family, this is where emotional intelligence faces its final trial. Here, Stoicism stops being theory. It becomes survival. Picture this. Evening. You return home drained, carrying the weight of a long day. The lights are dim. You take off your shoes. Then someone you love says something small. perhaps even harmless, but it lands like a blow. You feel that instant spark of anger rise from your chest to your throat, and before you know it, the spark becomes a storm. The words spill out, harsh, automatic, uncontrolled, and in seconds peace collapses into noise. That's the moment most people miss, the thin, silent space between reaction and restraint. The Stoics called that space freedom. Emotional intelligence at home isn't about avoiding anger. It's about standing steady inside it. To recognize that emotions are signals, not orders. They speak, but they don't command. In marriage, EQ becomes the bridge that allows conversations to continue when emotions try to end them. It's what turns conflict into understanding. Sometimes all it takes is a pause, a hand reaching across silence, or a question whispered softly, "How are you really feeling right now?" That moment alone can rescue a bond from sinking into distance, because to be understood is not always the goal. To feel seen, that's where love breathes again. Here's something simple but powerful. Create a pause signal with your partner, a word, a gesture, a breath that means let's step back for 10 minutes. Not to escape, but to cool the flame before it burns the bridge. Many relationships don't fail for lack of love. They fail for lack of space between words. As Seneca wrote, "No man was ever wise by chance." Wisdom is practiced in those small, ordinary pauses when emotion wants control and reason chooses patience. But emotional intelligence isn't only for romance. It's equally vital in friendship, where we often take people's loyalty for granted. You stop checking in, they stop replying, and soon silence replaces closeness. We assume neglect where there is only exhaustion. EQ is what keeps those small misunderstandings from turning into permanent distance. Instead of saying, "Why have you been so distant?" say, "I miss you. Are you okay?" The first accuses, the second embraces. That shift from demand to care is the quiet mark of maturity. And when it comes to parenting, EQ becomes the longest and most sacred lesson of all. Children don't learn from lectures. They learn from what we model in the moments we think they're not watching. When we lose patience and shout, they learn that anger is how power speaks. When we kneel, look them in the eye and say, "I see you're upset about this," they learn that feelings can be named and navigated, and naming is the first step toward mastery. Children don't need perfect parents, they need self-aware ones. They need to hear the words, "I was wrong," "I lost my temper," "I'm sorry." That sentence teaches more about honor than 100 rules ever could. If you want to raise emotionally intelligent children, turn emotions into a language spoken daily. Instead of asking, "Did you have fun?" ask, "Was there a moment today when you felt sad or angry? What did you do then?" You're not just asking about their day, you're teaching them to see themselves. The Stoics believed that no man can rule a city until he can rule his mind. The same applies to a child. They can't command their world until they can name their storm. But here's the paradox. Those we love most often see our worst. Not because they deserve it, but because we believe they'll forgive it. Familiarity becomes permission, and we confuse love with license. We say things we'd never say to strangers. We lash out, not because they're wrong, but because we feel safe enough to fall apart. But safety is not an excuse for carelessness. True love demands awareness. Every harsh word, every cold silence leaves a mark, even when apologies come later. The Stoic would ask, if you claim to love this person, why do you speak in ways that make them smaller? That question is a mirror. It strips away pride until only sincerity remains. Emotional intelligence begins when we stop asking, "Who's right?" and start asking, "What is kind?" The moments that tempt us to withdraw are the moments that call for courage, to stay, to soften, to understand. It's not emotion that destroys love. It's the stories we attach to it. When your child cries in a store, the shame doesn't come from their cry. It comes from the story, "Everyone thinks I'm failing." When your partner forgets something important, the pain isn't in the event. It's in the story, "I must not matter." But as Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The event is neutral. The meaning is what we create. Try this. Write down 4 things about a recent argument. What happened? What did you feel? What story did you tell yourself? What's a gentler truth that could also fit? You'll be amazed how emotion softens when you see the story behind it. This isn't about denying pain, it's about disarming it with awareness. Remember, how you speak at home becomes the emotional inheritance you pass down. Your child is always listening to your tone, your silence, your sighs. If they could replay your words to your partner, your parents, your friends, what would they learn about love? Are you passing down calm or chaos, empathy or ego? Because mastery of emotion isn't achieved in the grand gestures, it's forged in the smallest, quietest choices. Pausing 3 seconds before speaking, looking, not glaring. Sitting beside someone who's crying, not to stop the tears, but to say, "I'm here." And if you fail, and you will, remember this. Emotional intelligence isn't the absence of mistakes. It's the ability to learn from them without shame. Every time you lose your temper and choose to reflect instead of justify, you grow. Every time you apologize instead of defend, you evolve. EQ is not perfection, it's persistence, a lifelong practice of returning to what matters most, kindness, because home is not where you perform your best self, it's where your real self appears. And when you can bring awareness, patience, and humility into that sacred space, you build something indestructible, a peace that doesn't depend on circumstance, a strength that doesn't shout, a confidence that moves quietly through the world. And that confidence, rooted in truth, not pride, is where the next chapter begins. For once you can hold harmony at home, you begin to understand what real confidence looks like. Not loud, not forced, but calm, certain, and deeply human. Entering the 10th chapter, let's talk about the quiet wound that hides behind so many intelligent, capable people, the fear of not being enough. Most of us don't actually lack communication skills. We know how to speak, how to listen, how to connect. What we lack is the courage to be seen. We fear that if we speak honestly, we'll be judged, that if we show up as we are, we'll be rejected. It's not the tongue that hesitates, it's the heart that trembles. And that trembling has nothing to do with words, it's a wound in your sense of worth. Stoicism, if practiced deeply, doesn't promise comfort. It promises clarity. It doesn't teach you how to become confident. It teaches you to remove everything that hides the confidence already within you. Like light behind a curtain, it's never gone, it's just covered. Epictetus once said, "Attach yourself to what is spiritually superior, regardless of what other people think or do." That's not arrogance. It's liberation. You stop seeking validation like oxygen. You begin to breathe from within. Confidence isn't something you collect from others. It's what remains when you stop measuring your value by how people react to you. Yet, we forget this easily. You walk into a room, see a group laughing together, and suddenly a voice rises inside. What should I say? How do I not sound foolish? That voice isn't your intuition, it's your survival instinct. It's the echo of every moment you felt unseen. And so you retreat, scroll your phone, or laugh too quickly just to belong. But deep down, what you crave isn't attention, it's authenticity. You don't want to impress, you want to connect. Here's what Stoicism teaches. You don't silence the inner critic by shouting over it. You outgrow it. You stop treating its whispers as commands. A Stoic doesn't crush fear. They observe it until it loses shape. The wise realize the difference between feeling anxious and being unworthy. Those two things are not the same. You are not your doubt. You are the space that sees it. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are steeped in self-doubt, you will live in borrowed shadows. But if your thoughts align with truth, you'll move freely through any room, no longer seeking permission to exist. Imagine walking into a conversation wearing an invisible name tag that says, "Am I enough?" Everything you say bends around that question. Every glance becomes proof or punishment. A Stoic doesn't rip off the tag. They see it, acknowledge it, and then stop letting it define them. Because confidence doesn't come from convincing others of your worth, it comes from remembering it yourself. Here's a simple Stoic exercise before any difficult moment. Write down 3 things you cannot control: how others perceive you, how they respond, and how it all ends. Then write down 3 things you can control: your clarity, your composure, your effort. This small act shifts your focus from fear to freedom. You can't control the outcome, but you can control the integrity of your expression. That is real power. Confidence isn't the belief that you're flawless. It's the acceptance that you can live with your flaws. High emotional intelligence isn't about avoiding embarrassment. It's about recovering from it with grace. You don't need to own the room. You need to own your reaction when the room turns cold. You need to stay centered when ignored, misjudged, or dismissed. You need to understand that people's silence often says more about their world than yours. Think about the last time you replayed a conversation in your head, an awkward pause, a misunderstood joke, a missed cue. You tortured yourself over it, didn't you? The Stoic would ask, what good does it do? Reflection without self-compassion becomes self-harm. You don't grow by flogging yourself. You grow by observing with patience. After every moment that unsettles you, write 3 sentences. What made me uncomfortable? How did I respond? How do I want to respond next time? Don't judge, just guide. That's how discipline turns into growth. Don't chase confidence in techniques or tricks. You can mimic gestures, tone, and posture, but all that collapses when you don't believe in what you're saying. Confidence isn't born from performance, it's born from purpose. The Stoics didn't speak to impress, they spoke to serve truth. If you want to feel more confident, don't memorize quotes. Live in a way that gives your words weight. Read deeply, think clearly, experience honestly. Because when you've lived what you're saying, your voice already carries authority. And if you ever feel like you have nothing to say, remember this: silence can be strength too. As long as it's not fear pretending to be calm, you have the right to listen, to observe, to simply be present. You don't need to fill every silence to prove you belong. The truly confident don't demand attention. They radiate ease. They are full within themselves. Imagine you are a glass of water. If you're empty, you'll crave to be filled with praise, validation, approval. But if you're full, you come to others not to take, but to share. Stoicism is the art of filling your glass from within through discipline, reflection, and alignment with your values. And when rejection comes, as it inevitably will, let it pass through you. Don't build walls against it. Don't decorate it into identity. See it for what it is, a moment, not a measure. Seneca wrote, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man." Replace death with rejection. He who fears rejection will never speak a word that matters. Real confidence is quiet. It doesn't seek proof. It doesn't chase applause. It's the steadiness that remains when praise and criticism weigh the same. The courage to speak when it counts, and the peace to stay silent when it doesn't. So, can you walk into a room without performing? Can you speak not to prove your value, but to live it? Can you withstand misunderstanding without collapsing into self-doubt? If you can, you're not chasing confidence, you're embodying it. You're not practicing a technique, you're living a philosophy. You're living like a Stoic. But even the most grounded hearts can be shaken. Life has a way of testing what we've built when we least expect it. It starts small, a misunderstanding, a loss, a sudden silence, and then it spreads. Until one morning you wake up and everything inside feels fractured. That's when Stoicism stops being theory and becomes medicine. That's where we go next, learning to face personal crisis with the calm, clarity, and resilience that no storm can destroy. At this stage, let's step into the quiet earthquakes, the kind that don't break buildings but slowly erode your inner ground. There are days you wake up with a weight you can't name. The sky is bright, yet something feels dim inside. Your inbox overflows, your schedule looks like a siege map, and your heart beats faster not from fear, but fatigue. The world praises endurance, but rarely teaches recovery. It demands adaptability, but not peace. And so, we keep running, sprinting toward undefined destinations, mistaking motion for meaning. But what wears a person down isn't the storm, it's the constant drizzle, the unending pressure, the slow leak of spirit through 1,000 small demands. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it language. They didn't speak of burnout or emotional intelligence, but they lived its truth. They called it training the mind, the art of staying unshaken while the world trembles. They knew that a person's strength wasn't measured by how loudly they fought life, but how calmly they carried it. Emotional intelligence, in its truest form, isn't about managing people. It's about mastering the self, about seeing emotions for what they are, visitors, not rulers. Picture this. You sit before your computer. The clock ticks louder than it should. Your hands tremble slightly as the deadline approaches. The breath shortens, the mind races, panic starts its climb. Most people fight or flee, but the Stoic trained mind pauses, not to escape emotion, but to name it. I'm anxious. Simple words, but powerful ones, because once you name it, you separate from it. You become the observer, not the prisoner. That tiny space between you and your feeling, that's freedom. One breath, one task, one moment at a time, you return to control. Not of the world, but of yourself. Yet the hardest storms aren't deadlines, they're losses, the collapse of what you thought would last. A betrayal you didn't see coming, a love that grew cold, a job that vanished overnight. These aren't just events, they're inner earthquakes, and what makes them dangerous isn't their force, it's their duration, the way they hum quietly in the background of your days. The way you smile through meetings while something inside you quietly breaks. Emotional intelligence here means sitting with that pain, not to wallow, but to understand it. You write down what hurts. You admit, I'm lost. And then, like a commander surveying a broken field, you ask, what's still within my control? Maybe it's how you breathe. Maybe it's how you eat. Maybe it's the decision to rest when your mind calls it weakness. Every small act becomes a quiet rebellion, a whisper that says, I'm still here. True recovery doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from walking through it with awareness. Seneca once said, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. The Stoic doesn't run from sorrow. He studies it, learns from it, and builds muscle where others collapse. When you allow yourself to feel fully without letting feelings dictate your behavior, you create an armor that bends without breaking. And yet, the body speaks long before the mind admits exhaustion. Restless sleep, constant irritability, the slow creep of apathy. Burnout isn't one bad night. It's the accumulation of years spent saying yes when your soul screamed no. Ironically, it's often the strong who fall hardest, the reliable ones, the ones who never stop giving. The world applauds them until they collapse. But the body doesn't negotiate. It whispers first, then it warns, and finally, it demands. The cure isn't escape, it's boundary. It's the courage to say enough without guilt, to silence the phone, to decline one more obligation, to step outside and walk without purpose. A Stoic rest is not idleness, it's maintenance. It's choosing to preserve the vessel that carries your strength. You don't need retreats in foreign lands. You need quiet moments of truth with yourself. A few breaths, a cup of tea, a silent room where you can hear the pulse of your own existence. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you were alone without reaching for distraction? Most people fear stillness because in silence the truth becomes audible. The mind reveals its clutter, the heart its fatigue. But stillness is medicine. Without it, stress turns to illness. You see it in headaches, shallow sleep, strained voices, and the unspoken resentment toward those who love you most. The Stoics practiced stillness not as luxury, but as discipline, a daily audit of the soul. When chaos builds, they would ask, what depends on me? Not the world, not the weather, not the will of others, but this breath, this thought, this choice. That is where freedom lives. So, breathe deeply, walk slowly. Write down gratitude, not as sentiment, but as training. 10 breaths before replying to anger. A 15-minute walk before surrendering to despair. These are small acts, but each one is a seed of endurance. The difference between those who crumble and those who endure isn't luck. It's practice. The strong don't wait for peace to appear. They cultivate it daily, quietly, consistently. Stoicism is not the art of detachment. It's the art of grounded engagement, of facing life's weight without letting it bury you. And if you ever ask, what's the purpose of all this pain? Remember this ancient truth, echoed through time: suffering, when faced with awareness, transforms. It's not a punishment, it's a forge. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Pain, when endured consciously, gives birth to endurance. Endurance shapes character, and character, once tested, gives rise to hope. That's not comfort for the weak. It's a strategy for the strong. The Stoics didn't pray for an easy life. They trained for a meaningful one. So if you're tired, if you're hanging on by a thread, take this to heart. You're not broken. You're in training. Every breath you take through pain is proof that strength still lives in you. Every small act of self-control is a declaration of resilience. And as we move forward, we'll go deeper, beyond daily struggle, into the silent wounds left by trauma. Because some pain doesn't shout. It whispers. It hides in the spaces between thoughts. And that's where emotional intelligence transforms into something even greater, not just endurance, but healing. As we step into this chapter, let's talk about the wounds no one sees. The ones covered by smiles, by competence, by cheerful photos that hide quiet emptiness. Some people carry these invisible bruises for decades, convincing the world and themselves that they've moved on. But silence doesn't mean peace. Sometimes it's the scar tissue of survival. A friend once told me over a drink, "Every time someone goes quiet on me, I panic. It feels like they're about to leave." He wasn't exaggerating. When he was a child, his mother used silence as punishment. No shouting, no scolding, just cold, heavy quiet that lasted for days. To a young mind, that wasn't discipline. It was exile. Years later, no one freezes him out anymore. Yet when a partner delays replying to a text, that same fear returns, quiet but sharp. That's how emotional wounds work. They don't roar, they whisper. They live in repetition, small moments that teach you pain until it becomes habit. A look of disdain, a cry ignored. 1,000 versions of "you're too sensitive" until you stop feeling altogether. And when you finally stop needing anyone, you mistake that numbness for strength. But numbness isn't peace. It's the body's last attempt at self-defense. The Stoics never denied pain. They studied it. They saw emotion not as weakness, but as a teacher, an invitation to look closer. Modern language calls it trauma. Stoicism calls it the unexamined wound. When you stop feeling, you stop knowing yourself. And the first step back is not healing, it's honesty. To sit down with what hurts and say, "I'm not abandoning myself anymore." I once met a woman who always snapped at her son when he cried. She wasn't cruel, but the sound of his sobbing sent her into panic. One day, while reflecting on her childhood, she realized why. Her mother used to lock her in a room whenever she cried. "Come out when you've stopped," she'd say. So the girl learned that tears were shameful. Decades later, she still punished emotion, this time in her own child. The moment she saw the connection, she broke down, not from guilt, but from recognition. Awareness was her first act of freedom. The Stoics believed that clarity begins with naming things. Seneca once said, "No man heals himself by concealment." Naming your emotion is like lighting a candle in a dark room. Say it aloud. "I feel abandoned. I feel small. I feel unseen." Light exposes the corners where pain hides, and once the light touches it, it begins to change. A friend of mine writes letters to his 10-year-old self. Nothing poetic, just simple words. "Hey, I know you felt alone back then, but I'm here now." The first time he did it, he cried for hours, not from sadness, but from relief. That was the first time he'd stopped ignoring his own pain. Sometimes healing doesn't look like triumph. It looks like sitting quietly with your past and saying, "I see you." But what if you don't have someone to listen? Then you build your own refuge. The Stoics often practiced solitude, not escape, but renewal. You can walk in silence. You can draw your emotions, even messily. You can sit under morning light with a cup of tea and just breathe. Healing doesn't need witnesses. It only needs presence. One of my friends sketches his moods each day. Angry red lines, calm blues, restless grays. They're not pretty, he says, but they're honest. Honesty itself is therapy. There's a practice I often share. Revisit an old memory that still stings. This time, replay it in your mind differently. When your boss yells, you don't shrink. You breathe. You stand steady. When your parent disapproves, you don't beg for understanding. You stay grounded. You're not rewriting the truth. You're retraining the body to associate the past with calm, not chaos. Like a child who once drew a dark room but now sketches a window with sunlight streaming in. That's not imagination. That's reprogramming. The Stoics understood the same truth modern science confirms. The mind can reshape its responses. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." You don't erase the past. You learn to walk through it without flinching. But there's another layer, what the Stoics might have called the shadow within. The parts of us we disown, the pieces we call weak or shameful. They show up when we overreact to harmless criticism because once, long ago, our worth was tied to perfection. They show up when we laugh too quickly because once, silence meant danger. The shadow isn't evil, it's just unseen, but the danger lies in mistaking it for identity. I'm just logical, we say, when really we're afraid to feel. I'm independent, we boast, when really we're terrified to rely on anyone again. Every time we ignore the shadow, it grows until one day it becomes the room we live in, the room we call reality. And when that happens, emotions don't disappear. They freeze. You stop feeling joy. You stop feeling rage. You stop knowing what you want. Life becomes a series of polite reactions, smiles that don't reach the eyes, laughter without echo. You've probably met people like this. They seem fine, successful, untouched, but look closely and you'll see it. The hollowness of a soul that forgot how to feel. They call it composure. It's actually exhaustion. The Stoics never equated strength with numbness. They defined strength as the courage to face pain with dignity, to choose a response that honors the soul, not one that deepens the wound. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And that insight holds the key. If we can imagine pain so vividly that it governs us, we can also imagine compassion deeply enough to heal. Reimagining your story doesn't deny the past. It reclaims your power within it. As you grow steadier, something subtle begins to shift. You stop projecting your pain onto others. You no longer assume every cold glance means rejection. You stop treating distance as danger. You realize not every silence is abandonment. Not every disagreement is betrayal. You begin to live in the present, not in the echoes of your past. Healing, then, isn't a finish line. It's a lifestyle. It's the daily act of showing up for your emotions with courage, not control. It's learning to live without running, to feel without drowning. And when you walk this path long enough, something remarkable happens. You stop merely surviving. You begin to lead. You start to influence, not through power, but through understanding. Because when you master your inner world, you see others more clearly. And that's where the next lesson awaits. Advanced social strategies. Not for manipulation, not for gain, but for connection born from truth. From this calm, we'll explore how to understand others as deeply as you've come to understand yourself, and how to shape your world, not through force, but through quiet influence. Entering this chapter, let's strip away one of the biggest illusions of modern life, the belief that success belongs to the smartest person in the room. It doesn't, nor does it always belong to the hardest worker. In the real world, success belongs to those who understand a quieter, deeper truth. People don't act on logic, they act on emotion. The Stoics knew this centuries ago. They observed that reason may guide the mind, but emotion steers the heart. And if you don't learn to navigate emotions, your own and others, you'll keep running into invisible walls, polite nods with no true agreement, relationships that look fine but rot underneath, opportunities lost to unspoken tension. Advanced social mastery isn't about charm. It's about clarity. It's not about learning tricks. It's about learning perception. To see through people without losing sight of yourself. You don't need a degree to do that. You need awareness. You need to see what isn't said, the hesitation before a smile, the silence between sentences, the weight in a sigh. Because rejection rarely announces itself. It hides in tone, in timing, in the absence of enthusiasm. If you miss that, you miss reality. Think about the workplace. You can have the best ideas in the room, but if your timing is off, if you pitch them to someone who's stressed, distracted, or threatened, those ideas die unheard. The Stoics would call that lack of alignment with nature. To move with life, not against it, means understanding when to act, when to pause, when to wait. Emotional timing is everything. You might win the argument, but lose the person. You might deliver logic and still fail because emotion wasn't ready to receive it. Picture a meeting. The air feels heavy. Everyone smiles, but the silence between sentences feels thick. No one says what they truly mean. Or think about a social gathering where everyone's laughing, yet no one's really present. That's not connection, it's performance. True social intelligence is knowing when the masks are on and choosing not to wear one yourself. The colleague who cracks jokes endlessly might be terrified of irrelevance. The cold manager might be drowning in unseen pressure. Seeing this doesn't make you naive, it makes you wise. You begin to interact with the person, not the persona. Here's the first rule of advanced social strategy. Filter your emotions before your words, not to suppress, but to strengthen. When someone dismisses you, when you're undermined, when anger surges, pause. The Stoics taught that emotion is a spark. Let it light the lamp of awareness, not the fire of destruction. Never respond with mood, respond with vision. When treated unfairly, the average person reacts. The wise one reflects. They ask, what serves my long-term peace here? Anger, after all, is a debt you pay to yourself. You have the right to feel it. You don't have the right to let it rule. A young professional once told me how her team leader constantly cut her off during meetings. She nearly quit, convinced he didn't respect her. But one day, instead of exploding, she asked for a one-on-one. Calmly, she said, I've noticed I get interrupted often. I'd like to understand why. Am I unclear when I speak? The leader went quiet, then confessed, I'm sorry. I've been under pressure and haven't managed it well. That moment changed everything. One question, delivered with composure, saved her job and rebuilt respect. In another example, imagine presenting an idea and someone subtly undermines you. Most people would freeze or fight. But the Stoic approach, breathe. Look them in the eye and say, I sense you have a different view. Could you share it? Suddenly the balance of power shifts. You move from reactive to proactive. You invite dialogue instead of defending your ego. You demonstrate strength not through dominance, but through control. The second rule, anticipate emotion before it erupts. Pay attention to the quiet shifts. A colleague who used to contribute now goes silent. A client who used to reply fast now takes days. These are emotional cues, not coincidences. Step in early. Say, I sense you're not entirely comfortable. Would you like to talk about it? You'll be shocked how often that one line disarms tension before it turns to damage. Stoicism calls this prudence, the ability to read the direction of the wind before the storm arrives. But wisdom also means knowing when to walk away. Some connections aren't worth saving. The friend who drains you with endless complaints but never listens. The colleague who uses you but never shows up for you. The partner who needs you small so they can feel tall. The Stoics never glorified attachment. They valued dignity over approval. If a relationship demands you betray your values to stay, it's not loyalty, it's bondage. The highest strategy is stepping back without bitterness, releasing without resentment, because social mastery isn't about rising above others, it's about not falling with them. The calmest person in the room has the most power, not because they control others, but because they control themselves. You can practice this daily. When someone makes you feel small, resist the reflex to prove your worth. Speak with clarity, not force. When you're ignored, don't shout louder. Excel quietly. Let your consistency speak where your words can't. One woman I know stopped fighting to be heard in meetings. Instead, she started sending detailed reports before each one. By the third week, her manager turned and said, "Would you mind presenting this to the team?" She never demanded recognition. She earned it through quiet precision. Stoicism calls this excellence without noise. Real influence takes time. It's a long game, built on composure and self-mastery. The Stoics were masters of this. They didn't argue for their worth, they embodied it. They understood that respect outlasts popularity. You may not be liked by everyone, but you can still be trusted. And trust is power's most silent ally. So remember this. Success isn't about how many people praise you. It's about how many people respect you, even when they don't agree. Speak truth without cruelty. Listen without losing yourself. Confront without hostility. Communicate without compromise of integrity. In a world obsessed with being liked, the Stoic stands apart, not through rebellion, but through calm. True mastery of social life isn't manipulation. It's alignment between what you say and who you are. It's choosing authenticity over approval, principle over popularity, and when you live that way, something beautiful happens. You stop chasing rooms that ignore you. Rooms begin to notice your silence. Because emotional intelligence and social mastery aren't destinations. They're disciplines. You don't practice them to be perfect. You practice them to stay awake, to keep your center when others lose theirs. And that's where we go next, to the final understanding that this isn't a course or a tactic. It's a lifelong journey. You don't train to impress the world. You train to never abandon yourself. As we arrive at this final chapter, let's face the truth most people avoid. We are not born to master our emotions. We are born to feel them. Fear, anger, desire. They were once our survival codes, the instincts that kept us alive in a world of danger. But survival isn't living. To truly live, to grow like a rooted tree that stands through storms, we must move beyond instinct. We must refine what nature gave us. That's the real work of emotional intelligence, not the soft skill it's marketed as today, but the discipline of understanding the mind, training the heart, and showing up with clarity no matter how loud the world becomes. The Stoics saw this clearly. To them, emotional intelligence wasn't about charm or composure. It was the mark of inner nobility. And in our era, where emotions are the new currency, traded, manipulated, and monetized, that nobility has never been rarer. Every swipe, every notification, every spark of outrage online is engineered to hijack your feelings. The world profits when you lose your calm. So, every time you slow down, breathe, and respond from awareness instead of impulse, you're committing an act of rebellion. A quiet, invisible rebellion. But rebellion takes repetition. You don't wake up emotionally wise, you train for it. Through journaling, through reflection, through the small daily act of noticing. The Stoics wrote constantly, not for praise, but for discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Those weren't words for others, they were reminders to himself. Emotional mastery isn't a one-time awakening. It's the daily grind of awareness. So start with a simple question, the one most people avoid. What am I really feeling right now? Anger when criticized, shame when ignored, jealousy when someone else succeeds. These feelings aren't failures, they're data. But if you don't examine them, they own you. Like a sailor in rough seas, you can't stop the waves. You can only steer, and the steering wheel is awareness. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not confront others, but sit with yourself, with the heat of anger, the ache of sadness, the sting of envy, without escaping. Emotional journaling helps because what you can name, you no longer fear. The Stoic doesn't write to vent, but to dissect. You ask yourself, am I really angry at them? Or at myself for feeling overlooked? That's how you cut through illusion. Emotions aren't facts, they're messages. The wise read them carefully before acting on them. Even breathing, so simple, so easily dismissed, is one of the oldest Stoic tools. Deep breathing isn't about calming down. It's about remembering you are alive, that you can choose again. No one makes wise decisions while gasping for air. One deep breath before speaking can change the outcome of an entire day. It can stop an argument. It can save a friendship. It's small, but small things create empires within. Imagine this. Every time you remain calm when someone else explodes, you're not avoiding the battle. You're winning the only one that matters, the battle within. Every moment you ask, am I reacting from an old wound or from the present? You reclaim power from the past. That's the Stoic definition of victory, mastery over the self. But here's the truth, most won't tell you. There is no finish line, no graduation day for emotional intelligence. The moment you think you've mastered yourself is the moment life will test you again. You will still stumble. You'll still lose your patience. You'll still say things you regret. But every reflection afterward is proof of progress, because you're still asking, could I handle that better next time? And that question is what keeps you alive inside your own growth. The Stoics trained daily, not when chaos arrived. They didn't wait for anger to strike to practice control. They practiced in peace so they could stand steady in war. You can do the same. Make weekly reflection a ritual. Look back, not to judge, but to understand. That argument, that moment of silence, that time you swallowed truth out of fear, replay it with clarity. Ask only one question. What can I do differently next time? Growth isn't measured in perfection. It's measured in awareness. Listen more. Not to fix others, but to sharpen humility. To stop projecting. To stop assuming. To let others be without losing yourself. EQ isn't people-pleasing. It's presence. It's creating space for others without erasing your own shape. Treat emotional intelligence like training for endurance. Set goals. Choose one virtue at a time, patience, clarity, restraint, and practice it in small moments. When the waiter gets your order wrong, when your partner interrupts, when your coworker criticizes. Those are your workouts. Every time you stay centered, you build another muscle of calm. Keep track of progress. Write down the moments you held your composure, the compliments you received, the conflicts you de-escalated. These tiny notes are bricks in your inner foundation. Over time, you'll look back and realize you don't break where you used to. That's growth. Not loud, not public, but steady. And yes, you'll need people who hold up a mirror. Find someone you trust to tell you interrupt too much, or you avoid conflict. Don't defend yourself. Thank them. They're showing you what your ego hides. Every truth from another is a doorway to becoming freer from yourself. This journey will test you. Some days you'll wonder why bother learning to stay calm in a world that thrives on chaos. But that's exactly why you must. You don't learn emotional intelligence to change the world. You learn it so the world doesn't change you, because real freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's staying true when the noise tries to bend you. Not everyone will appreciate your calm. Some will mistake it for weakness. Some will mock your restraint. That's fine. Stoics never acted for applause. They acted from principle. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. So keep walking, keep training. When you lose your temper, return to awareness. When you fall, rise wiser. When you fail, reflect, not to punish, but to refine. Because the people you admire most, the ones whose presence steadies a room, they weren't born that way. They practiced. They built themselves through storms. There is no final mastery, only constant movement toward it. The further you go, the more you realize how endless the work is. That's not failure. That's awakening. Like the Stoics believed, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. The question isn't, am I there yet? It's, am I still trying to be better? As long as you keep asking that, you're already walking the path. And that path, the quiet, unseen road of self-mastery, is the only one worth walking. But as the lessons settle and the noise begins to fade, something deeper starts to stir within you. You've walked through awareness, discipline, empathy, restraint. You've learned how to hold your center when the world tries to shake it. Yet mastery doesn't end in silence. It begins there. Because once your inner world stands still, life asks for more. It asks what you will do with that peace, how you will move through others, shape your surroundings, and turn inner clarity into outer impact. Now imagine this, after years of learning to master your emotions, to speak with calm clarity, to stay steady when chaos surrounds you, you begin to notice something different. The world no longer shakes you as it once did. But something inside you asks a deeper question. What now? What comes after control? Because once you've mastered the inner storms, life calls you to another kind of challenge, the art of influence. Not the manipulative kind that bends others to your will, but the kind that aligns hearts through quiet strength. It's where your composure becomes a mirror for others. Your calm starts to affect rooms. Your silence carries weight. That's when emotional intelligence evolves into something greater, emotional leadership. Here's where many people fall. They think mastery ends when peace begins, but peace is only the foundation. What you do with it defines your legacy. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire during war, betrayal, and plague. Yet his journals weren't about conquest. They were about self-command, because he knew that to lead others, he had to rule himself first. Leadership begins where reaction ends. And that's what this next chapter is about. How to live and lead from a place of grounded influence rather than emotional chaos. Picture this. A workplace caught in tension, voices rising, egos clashing, everyone desperate to be right. You stand there, hearing it all, and realize something rare. You don't need to win. You need to guide. So, instead of matching the heat, you lower your tone. You ask the question no one dared to ask. What are we really trying to solve here? The room stills. The noise quiets. That's emotional authority, the strength to anchor when others drift. But here's the paradox. The more grounded you become, the more the world tests your patience. People will mistake your calm for weakness. They'll try to provoke you to see if the old you still lives there. Don't take the bait. Epictetus warned, if someone provokes you, remember, it is your opinion that they have injured you. You can't control their tone, but you can control the meaning you attach to it. And in that choice lies the difference between influence and impulse. Real influence isn't loud, it's consistent. A wise person doesn't push their way into the spotlight. They become the light others gather around. When you live aligned with your values, when your words and actions match no matter who's watching, people begin to trust you without needing reasons. That's when respect replaces reputation. One of my closest friends once told me about a crisis at work. His boss blamed him for a project that wasn't his fault. Everyone expected him to fight back. He didn't. He listened, acknowledged the mistake, and calmly stated the facts. A week later, when the truth came out, the same boss came to him privately and said, "I misjudged you." That's the long game of Stoic influence. You don't win by proving you're right. You win by staying right when the world's watching you fall. Influence like that isn't strategy, it's presence. It's not about trying to be unshakable. It's about knowing what you stand for so deeply that no one can shake it out of you. When you walk into a room, your silence should carry the weight of integrity, not pride. People feel it. They may not say it, but they sense it. The steadiness of someone who doesn't need to perform. And yet, even in mastery, there's danger. The temptation to become detached, to hide behind calmness like armor. But detachment isn't the goal. The Stoics weren't cold. They were clear. They felt deeply but refused to drown in it. Real mastery isn't a wall. It's a window, open yet steady in the wind. You can be kind without being naive, forgiving without being foolish, humble without disappearing. This, then, is the next evolution of emotional intelligence, to live as someone who inspires calm in others, who lifts without commanding, who speaks without needing the last word, the one who leads not because they demand to, but because their presence reminds others of who they could be. When you reach that level, success no longer feels like conquest. It feels like contribution. Your strength becomes a service, your discipline becomes an example, and every word you speak, every silence you hold, carries the quiet authority of someone who has already won the hardest war, the war within. That's the beginning of the higher path, the one where mastery becomes meaning and control becomes creation. Because once you've conquered yourself, the next chapter isn't about more power. It's about using that power to bring peace wherever you stand. At this stage, influence alone is not enough, because even the calmest heart and the clearest mind can falter when the world begins to whisper its temptations again: comfort, vanity, validation. Once you've learned how to stay steady in chaos, the next trial is subtler. Staying true in peace. The Stoics called this the test of virtue in prosperity. It's easy to appear wise when life is loud. The real challenge is keeping your inner compass when the noise stops, when success softens your edge, and comfort dulls your discipline. Imagine this. You've built composure. You've earned respect. People listen when you speak. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, ego slips in dressed as confidence. You start to crave recognition for your calm, praise for your wisdom, applause for your restraint. You don't even notice that you've begun performing virtue instead of living it. Seneca once warned, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." But calmness built for admiration, not alignment, is just another disguise for insecurity. This is where humility becomes your new form of armor. True mastery isn't about being above others. It's about being below no one, not even yourself. The Stoics practiced what they called the inner retreat, a deliberate return to simplicity. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, would write nightly reminders to himself. Remember, you are just a man. Tomorrow you may die. Let your soul be worthy of that truth. He didn't write it for show. He wrote it to stay human in a world eager to make him a god. So how do you keep your heart clean when success begins to cloud it? Start by questioning your motives. When you give advice, is it to help or to be admired? When you stay calm, is it from wisdom or fear of losing face? These questions cut deep, but they keep you honest. The goal isn't to appear enlightened, it's to remain free from the need to appear anything at all. Let me tell you a story. There was a craftsman in Athens who built sculptures so precise that people called him divine. One day, a student asked, "How do you create something so perfect?" He smiled and said, "I simply remove everything that isn't truth." That's the Stoic way. You don't add to yourself, you strip away what's false. Every layer of pretense, every trace of vanity, every lie that says, "I'll be enough when others approve." Remove them one by one until only clarity remains. But make no mistake, humility isn't weakness. It's knowing your power and choosing not to flaunt it. It's what allows you to move through the world without being corrupted by it. When you no longer seek validation, you become ungovernable. No insult can diminish you, no praise can inflate you. You act from principle, not performance. And in that space, your presence begins to feel different, not grand, but grounded. People sense it. They can't quite explain it, but they trust it. This too is emotional intelligence at its highest form, not just reading emotions, but reading intentions, both in others and in yourself. The calm that once protected you from chaos now becomes the foundation for grace, for leadership without pride, for wisdom without distance. And yet even here, the journey continues, because once you've learned to rule yourself and stay humble in power, life gives you one final test, the test of purpose. What will you use this strength for? How will you shape the world around you now that you can no longer be swayed by it? As Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The next step, then, is not about self-mastery, but legacy. The question is no longer how do I stay calm, but what will I do with this calm to make something greater than myself? And that question, once answered, transforms discipline into destiny. From here, the journey deepens, because once humility anchors you, the next challenge is learning to lead, not through authority, but through presence. True leadership has little to do with position. It's the quiet art of guiding others without demanding their obedience. It's influence without noise, power without arrogance. And it begins not when others start listening to you, but when you begin listening to them. Now imagine this. You walk into a room where tension hums in the air. People are polite, but their eyes dart away. A team divided, a family strained, a friendship fraying under unspoken truths. Most people rush to fix it, to speak, to advise, to impose solutions. But a Stoic leader waits. They read the silence before the words. They know that emotions move faster than logic, and no truth can be heard by a mind that feels unsafe. So they create space. They slow the tempo. They breathe first, so others can breathe too. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." The same applies to leadership. Waste no time convincing others to trust you. Just become the kind of person whose calm, clarity, and consistency make trust inevitable. Real leadership is not built in meetings or speeches. It's built in how you respond when things go wrong. When someone fails you, do you humiliate them or teach them? When conflict erupts, do you defend your pride or protect the harmony of the whole? There was once a Roman general who led thousands into battle without raising his voice. His soldiers said that when he spoke softly, they could hear him even through chaos. Why? Because his words carried weight, not from volume, but from integrity. You could feel he lived what he demanded. That's the essence of Stoic influence. People follow not because they must, but because they see truth walking before them. But leading with calm doesn't mean suppressing emotion. It means mastering expression. Anger, when restrained and directed, becomes justice. Compassion, when disciplined, becomes wisdom. A Stoic doesn't eliminate emotion, they refine it. Like a blacksmith tempers steel, they heat, hammer, and cool their impulses until strength and sharpness coexist. The result is not coldness, it's precision. In modern life, this kind of leadership is rare. We see loud managers, not wise mentors. We see people who command out of insecurity, not conviction. Yet every one of us, whether parent, colleague, or friend, leads someone. The question is not whether you have influence, it's what kind of influence you leave behind. Does your presence make others smaller or stronger? Do people feel drained or steadied after speaking with you? Seneca wrote, "He who serves the common good serves himself." Leadership isn't about being served. It's about lifting the standard of behavior in those around you. You can do this in the smallest ways, choosing patience in traffic, honesty in meetings, or dignity when disrespected. People watch more than they listen, and your consistency becomes your legacy. The modern Stoic understands this. You don't inspire others by perfection, but by composure. When you admit mistakes calmly, others learn courage. When you handle pressure without collapsing, others learn strength. When you treat those beneath you with respect, others learn character. That is silent leadership, the kind that doesn't seek applause because its work is invisible but undeniable. And yet, leadership, no matter how noble, eventually confronts fatigue. The weight of responsibility can erode your peace if not tended carefully. That's why the next lesson is crucial. Learning how to protect your inner world while carrying others. Because influence means little if you lose yourself in the process. The greatest leaders don't just guide the world. They guard their own soul while doing it. At this stage, the battle turns inward again, because once you begin guiding others, you realize how easy it is to lose the very stillness that made you strong. Leadership tests not only your patience, but your peace, the weight of others' expectations, their projections, their constant pull on your energy. If you're not careful, all of it can drain you until you start mistaking fatigue for purpose. This is where the Stoic must learn a new kind of discipline, the art of retreating without running away. Now imagine this. You're surrounded by people, messages, demands, all asking for your time, your focus, your strength. You nod, you respond, you show up. And yet, somewhere inside, something begins to dim. You find yourself restless, even in stillness, numb, even in motion. That's the silent exhaustion of those who give without renewing. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private meditations, "Look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look there." He knew that solitude wasn't an escape, it was maintenance. Without it, even the strongest mind begins to corrode under constant exposure to noise. To protect your inner world, you must learn the sacred rhythm between engagement and withdrawal. The Stoics practiced what they called daily return, a deliberate act of stepping back to examine the day, to cleanse the mind of clutter, and to remember that nothing outside you can corrupt your peace unless you let it. Seneca described this ritual beautifully. Each day I take account of myself. What wrong have I done? What good have I achieved? I leave nothing unexamined. That reflection wasn't guilt, it was purification. Just as a soldier sharpens his blade, a Stoic sharpens his awareness through quiet. Today, that quiet is harder to find. Our attention is hunted by algorithms and urgency, but if you can create even 10 minutes of solitude, no phone, no noise, no input, you'll feel the mind begin to reset. That stillness is not idleness, it's preparation. It's the fire being refueled before the next battle. Without it, you start reacting instead of responding, existing instead of living. There's a saying among old sailors: the sea is never cruel. It simply reveals who has forgotten the stars. The same is true of life. The waves aren't your enemy. Losing sight of your internal compass is. That compass is your philosophy, your principles, your clarity. Every time you slow down enough to realign with them, you protect your mind from chaos disguised as urgency. So, learn to rest with purpose. Not the kind of rest that numbs you, but the kind that revives your focus. Take walks alone. Journal your thoughts. Sit under the night sky and remind yourself how small your worries are beneath it. Real power doesn't come from constant motion. It comes from the ability to stop and still feel whole. And when you master that rhythm between giving and grounding, leading and listening, you'll find something astonishing. The world no longer drains you because you're no longer drawing energy from it. You've become your own source. You carry your peace like a flame in the wind, protected, steady, unextinguished. From this point, life asks one final thing of you: to share that light wisely. Because wisdom hoarded turns stagnant, but wisdom offered with care becomes legacy. And legacy, in the Stoic sense, is not fame. It's the quiet influence of a life well lived, echoing long after you're gone. At this point, the path no longer belongs to theory, it belongs to legacy. You've walked through awareness, discipline, and calm. You've led without noise, withdrawn without weakness. Now life turns and asks one final question: what will you leave behind? Because emotional intelligence, at its highest form, isn't about self-control anymore. It's about creation. It's about what your presence builds when you're gone. Imagine a candle in a dark hall. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It simply burns. And by burning, it shows others the way. That's what a life of mastery looks like. Every action becomes a lesson. Every pause, a sermon. Every choice, a quiet signature carved into the world. The Stoics never aimed to be admired, they aimed to be useful. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire but wrote to himself, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That line was never about perfection. It was about legacy, the invisible impact left by a person who lived with reason, compassion, and restraint. Your legacy doesn't start when you die. It begins in the smallest moments now. The tone you use with a stranger, the patience you show to someone learning, the grace with which you handle insult. Every interaction becomes a brick in the invisible monument of your character. Seneca reminded his students that long is the way by precepts, but short and effective by examples. You teach not through your words, but through the weight of your composure. Look back at the people who once inspired you. They may have been quiet, disciplined, even misunderstood, but something about their steadiness left a mark. They didn't force their wisdom onto others, they embodied it. That's how influence outlives the moment. It's not about reaching millions, it's about reaching deeply. Even if your calm steadies only one person, that still ripples further than you'll ever know. But here's the paradox. True legacy asks you to detach from recognition. You cannot both serve others and crave their applause. Epictetus wrote, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That means letting your actions speak even when no one notices. When you choose honesty over advantage, kindness over vengeance, consistency over convenience, you're etching invisible marks of greatness into the flow of life itself. The Stoic's gift is not noise, it's endurance. And as you keep walking, you'll realize something powerful. Legacy is not about what you leave for others, it's about what you awaken within them. Maybe someone watches how you handle failure with grace and decides to do the same. Maybe a child remembers your patience and carries it into their own life. Influence multiplies quietly through presence, not performance. When all is said and done, emotional mastery, social grace, inner strength, they were never the destination. They were the tools. Tools for building a life that speaks even when you are silent. The Stoics didn't chase immortality through fame. They found it in alignment, a life so whole that time couldn't erase its echo. And if there's one truth to take from all of this, it's this. You will not be remembered for how much you achieved, but for how you carried yourself through what you faced. The world forgets titles. It remembers composure. So live in a way that even your silence teaches something. Because in the end, wisdom isn't about conquering life. It's about moving through it so gracefully that your steps become a guide for those who come after. That's where the journey leads. Not to applause, but to peace. Not to power, but to presence. Not to being remembered, but to having truly lived. At this stage, the circle closes. Everything you've learned, emotional mastery, empathy, leadership, calm, legacy, leads back to a single truth. You are both the student and the teacher of your own mind. The journey doesn't end with peace. It begins with responsibility. Because wisdom once found demands to be lived. It's not enough to know what's right. You must embody it when it's hardest to do so. Picture this. Dawn breaking after a long storm. The streets are wet, the air heavy, but quiet. You step outside, and for a brief moment, everything stands still. That stillness, that fragile, fleeting calm, is what the Stoics built their entire philosophy around. The discipline to remain unmoved, not because life is gentle, but because you've trained your spirit to withstand its blows. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning, "You will meet with the ungrateful, the arrogant, the deceitful, the jealous, but none of them can harm you unless you let them." Those words weren't meant to be recited, they were meant to be lived, tested, proven in the fire of daily life. The final stage of emotional intelligence is not control, it's embodiment. It's when calm becomes instinct, compassion becomes reflex, and integrity becomes your default setting. You no longer have to pause and think, what would a wise person do here? You simply do it. That's the quiet transformation Stoicism aims for. It's not about suppressing emotion, but integrating it. To feel anger without cruelty, to feel sorrow without despair, to feel joy without attachment. A story tells of an old philosopher who was mocked by a younger rival. Day after day, the young man hurled insults at him, waiting for a reaction. But the old man remained calm. When asked why he never responded, he said, If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does it belong? That's the essence of emotional mastery, to stop picking up what isn't yours. The insult, the fear, the chaos. You let it fall, but this practice extends beyond words. It shapes how you move through the world, how you drive in traffic, how you speak when you're tired, how you act when no one is watching. Stoicism isn't built in temples or lecture halls. It's built in moments when irritation knocks and you answer with patience, when disappointment visits and you greet it with composure, when life demands noise and you choose silence, and there's a deeper layer still. True mastery isn't about protecting your peace from the world. It's about carrying peace into it. The calm person in a chaotic room doesn't withdraw, they anchor. They remind others through presence alone that there's another way to live. That's leadership at its highest form, the kind that doesn't need to speak to command attention, the kind that doesn't need followers to make an impact. Seneca once said, "He who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior." But what he didn't need to add is that this war never ends. Every day you'll face new tests, new triggers, new mirrors reflecting your own impatience, pride, or fear. But that's the beauty of it. You never truly graduate from self-mastery. You just rise, fall, reflect, and rise again, a little calmer each time. So when the world rushes past you, when others lose themselves in noise, remember, the Stoic doesn't chase the storm, nor hide from it. He stands within it, steady, aware, alive, and in that stillness he discovers what all this training was for. Not perfection, not power, but freedom. The quiet, unshakable freedom of a person who no longer needs the world to behave in order to remain at peace. Now imagine this, a moment near the end of the road, when everything you've practiced has been tested, refined, and stripped of pretense. The noise has quieted, the applause has faded, and what remains is not fame, not wealth, not even victory, but the kind of peace that doesn't depend on anything outside of you. This is where the journey leads, not to perfection, but to understanding. To that quiet realization that the purpose of mastering your emotions was never to escape life, but to walk through it with grace. You start to see it differently now. The chaos you once feared was never the enemy. It was the training ground. The people who misunderstood you, the moments that broke you, the failures that haunted you, all of them were teachers in disguise. The Stoics called this the providence of life, the belief that everything, even the harsh and unwanted, can serve the growth of the soul if met with the right mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." You begin to understand every obstacle was not a punishment, but an invitation to strengthen your patience, deepen your compassion, and refine your clarity. Think of the blacksmith. The blade does not resist the fire, it needs it. The hammer that strikes is not cruelty, it's purpose. In the same way, life refines you through impact. When you stop running from discomfort, you start transforming through it. The person who accepts pain without bitterness is not weak, they are free. Because they've discovered the hidden power of surrender. Not the passive kind that gives up, but the conscious kind that says, "I will not fight what I cannot change. I will turn it into strength." There's a scene I always remember. A teacher once told his students to hold a glass of water at arm's length. "It's light now," he said, "but how long can you hold it?" The class laughed at first. Minutes later, the weight began to burn. That's how emotions work. It's not what you carry, it's how long you refuse to put it down. Emotional intelligence teaches you not to throw the glass, not to break it, but to set it down gently and walk forward. And that's the final art, release. To let go, not with indifference, but with wisdom. To forgive not because someone deserves it, but because your peace deserves it. To move on without bitterness, because resentment is a form of bondage. Seneca said, "He who suffers before it is necessary, suffers more than necessary." The wise learn to suffer less, not because they avoid pain, but because they no longer resist it. You start realizing that all the techniques, all the reflection, all the philosophy, they were never about control. They were about liberation, emotional mastery, social intelligence, empathy, and discipline. All of it was leading you back to yourself, back to the still center that was always there, waiting beneath the noise. So when you reach this point, don't look for the next challenge. Look inward. Ask yourself one simple question. Can I remain at peace when the world forgets my name? Because that's the true test of mastery. To live so deeply aligned with your nature that even obscurity feels like freedom. And when you can walk quietly through the world, offering calm without needing credit, kindness without needing return, presence without needing recognition, that's when you've become untouchable. Not cold, not detached, but serenely whole. This is where the journey ends and begins again. In silence, in steadiness, in the simple eternal truth that what you've been seeking was never power over life, but harmony with it. At this point, the lesson turns inward once more. You've learned to control emotion, to lead with composure, to find freedom in restraint. But there's a deeper question that still waits in the quiet corners of your mind. How do you live with meaning now that you've mastered control? Because a life without chaos isn't the end goal. A calm sea means nothing if the sailor forgets why he set out in the first place. Imagine waking up one morning with nothing to prove, nothing to chase, and yet a feeling that something greater is calling you. Not ambition, not greed, something deeper, a pull toward purpose. The Stoics knew this feeling well. They called it living according to nature, not the trees and the wind, but the nature of one's own soul, doing what you were born to do with clarity, integrity, and quiet courage. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A man's worth is no greater than his ambitions," but he wasn't speaking of external success. He meant the ambition to live rightly, to align your actions with reason, to move through the world as a conscious being, not a drifting shadow. And when that purpose is found, calm transforms into power. You no longer need applause because every step becomes its own reward. At this stage of life, many people mistake calm for comfort. They slow down not out of wisdom, but out of fear of losing what they've built. The Stoic walks differently, still but not stagnant, peaceful but still in motion. Because inner peace was never meant to be a resting place, it's a foundation from which you rise higher, serve deeper, and see further. There's a story about a craftsman in ancient Greece who spent years carving intricate statues that would stand high above temple roofs where no human eye could see the details. When asked why he wasted effort on what would remain unseen, he replied, "The gods will see them." The Stoic would nod at that. True excellence needs no witness. You don't act rightly for praise, you act rightly because that's what your soul demands. This is where emotional intelligence transcends technique and becomes devotion. The devotion to live each day as an offering, to do your work well even when no one notices, to keep your word even when no one reminds you, to forgive before being asked. These are not acts of sentiment, they're acts of discipline. And discipline, when born from wisdom, becomes love in its highest form. Seneca once said, "As is a tale, so is life." Not how long it is, but how good it is that matters. Meaning isn't measured in years or titles, it's measured in presence, in the way you show up to ordinary days with extraordinary attention, in the way you turn small duties into sacred rituals. And so, the Stoics' journey ends not in victory, but in still participation with the world, fully alive, yet unbound. You stop seeking to conquer life and start cooperating with it. You realize that meaning was never waiting ahead. It was always built in the moments you met life consciously, with open eyes and a steady heart. Because in the end, the truest sign of mastery is simple: when your peace becomes contagious, when others feel safe in your presence, when your calm reminds them of their own strength. That's how wisdom echoes, quietly, endlessly, through the lives you've touched, even after you've gone. We've walked through 14 lessons on mastering emotional intelligence and social connection, not as theory, but as daily practice. Each insight was a step inward toward patience, empathy, and the quiet strength that Stoicism calls true freedom. Remember, mastery isn't a finish line, but a way of moving through life with awareness and grace. If these words spoke to you, take a moment to subscribe and keep growing with us. Share your reflection below with 3 simple words. Stay aware. Keep walking the path. The next lesson will take you even deeper. Have you ever left a room feeling smaller than when you entered, haunted by a glance, a tone, a silence you couldn't name but felt deeply? Sometimes it's not words that wound us, but what we fail to understand beneath them, our own emotions, reflected back by others. This is where the real training begins. Stay with me. Let's uncover what strength truly sounds like in silence. As we begin this first chapter, imagine this. You walk into a room filled with people you respect. Conversations flow easily, yet one glance, one careless word pierces deeper than it should. You smile, but something inside you twists. Hours later, that moment still lingers, not because of what was said, but because of what it stirred in you. This is where most people misunderstand strength. They think it's about knowledge, achievement, or control over others. But the truth? If you cannot master yourself, you master nothing. You can be brilliant, educated, accomplished, respected,